To enhance the realism of an NHAIR simulation, we will want the hair to collide with objects. Since NHAIR is part of the nucleus framework, that means it can collide with nucleus and cloth, as well as end particles and passive collision objects. In this case, when we first created the NHAIR, we opted not to collide with the emitter object, the scalp here, because we wanted to collide with the actual character head. I've got that hidden, so I want to go ahead and unhide it from the display layers here. Unhide the head layer. And I'm going to select the head and go into the nDynamics menu set and choose nMesh, Create Passive Collider. That's very simple. There's nothing more to that. I've just now made it so that that object can collide with all other nucleus objects in the same nucleus solver. And if I rewind and play the simulation, we can see that the hair is now bouncing off of the surface of the character's head. We can get in a little bit closer here. We can see that it's actually colliding with the ear and so on. Now that does impact performance. We were getting approximately 20 frames per second previously, and now we're getting about half that. If we need to increase our performance in the viewports, it's a simple matter to disable the evaluation for that particular passive collider. I'll select it and go to the attribute editor, Control A, and you'll see the nRigid shape node here. And right up at the top is the enable switch. So if I disable it and then rewind and play back, you see we're no longer getting any collisions. So that's a very simple thing we can do. I'll go back and re-enable it. Let's look at the collision properties for the hair itself. I'll select the hair and go into the hair system shape node and open up the collision section. And you'll see that there's a switch here which will disable collisions entirely for the hair and all other nucleus objects the hair comes in contact with. So that's another way of speeding up our simulation. Turn that back on again. You'll also see there's a self-collide switch, and that's off by default. And that, of course, allows hair clumps to collide with one another. I'm going to leave it off because it's going to actually severely impact performance if I turn it on. And in most cases, you won't need it to be on. To fine-tune the collisions, we might want to visualize the envelope of the clumps themselves. And to do that, we will scroll down a bit and under Solver Display, turn that on by choosing Collision Thickness. And now you'll see we get this yellow envelope around each clump. And that is the collision testing for the hair itself. So individual hairs are not calculated for the purposes of collisions. It's just the general shape of that clump of hair that's associated with that particular follicle. Can rewind and play it back, and we can kind of see there's a little bit of a lag in the display where the wireframes move faster than the collision envelopes. Don't let that throw you off. It's not really affecting the simulation. It just means that it's not updating in sync. If we needed to, we could play around with some of the attributes here, such as the collide width offset. If, for example, we needed those clumps to really not ever touch one another, we could increase this offset amount, and that's in centimeters, so a small value is going to make a big difference. And we won't see it update immediately. If you rewind and then play the simulation, then you will see it update. So you'll see now we've got thicker clumps for the purposes of collision, and that'll tend to keep them from ever touching one another. I'll go ahead and set that back down to a value of 0. You can see there's also some attributes here such as bounce and friction and stickiness. I think stickiness is probably the most useful one because, as the name implies, whenever a clump touches any other nucleus object, with non-zero stickiness, it will just stick there and stay there. Can rewind the simulation, turn the collision thickness display back off again, and increase the stickiness up to its maximum of 2, and press the play button. And you'll see that that hair kind of settled down a little bit better than it did before, and it doesn't tend to move around as much. We can turn it back down to 0 if we like. Those are some of the base properties for collisions for NHAIR.